Let me tell you something strange about people who talk to themselves. We live in a world where talking alone is quietly labeled as odd, unstable, something to hide. Yet some people do it anyway, softly, casually, in cars, in empty rooms, on quiet walks. And here's the question that always lingers, even if no one says it out loud: what are they really doing when they speak to no one? Because on the surface, it's easy to assume it's a habit, a quirk, a nervous tick, something accidental. But that's not the full picture. Beneath the surface, there's an entire psychology unfolding, one that has less to do with loneliness and much more to do with how a person relates to their own inner world. See, for some people, talking to themselves is not confusion, it's clarity. It's not instability, it's orientation. It's the sound of someone organizing their internal landscape in a world that rarely gives them the space to do so. You've probably noticed it before: someone murmuring under their breath while working, someone rehearsing a conversation that hasn't happened yet, someone narrating their actions quietly, as if grounding themselves in the moment. From the outside it can look unnecessary, even awkward, but from the inside it often feels like anchoring. Psychologists have found something quietly fascinating here. Self-directed speech, especially spoken aloud, is one of the earliest tools humans used to regulate attention, emotion, and decision-making. Children do it instinctively. They talk themselves through tasks, through fear, through play. And most of us are taught, slowly and subtly, to stop, to internalize it, to make it invisible. But some people don't fully let it go. And maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe it's a feature, because when you talk to yourself, you're not just filling silence, you're creating a dialogue where none exists. You're becoming both the observer and the participant. You ask yourself questions before the world demands answers. You process emotion before it spills outward. You rehearse truth before it's tested. It's not about hearing voices, it's about giving your thoughts somewhere to land. And here's what's often misunderstood: people assume this behavior comes from loneliness, from a lack of connection. But for many, it's the opposite. It comes from an overabundance of internal life, from a mind that moves faster than silence can hold, from thoughts that need shape before they dissolve. Talking to yourself is a way of making the abstract concrete, of pulling emotion out of the fog and into form. For some, it begins after emotional overwhelm, after years of being misunderstood, after learning that thinking quietly wasn't enough to stay oriented in the world. Saying things out loud becomes a way to stabilize, to hear yourself think, to confirm that you're here, that you exist in this moment. And when others overhear it, they often misread it. They see distraction, eccentricity, social withdrawal, but what they're missing is the self-regulation happening in real time, the nervous system settling itself through sound, through rhythm, through familiarity. There's a psychological concept here, though it rarely gets named plainly. It's called cognitive scaffolding, the act of supporting your thinking with external structure. Spoken words become handrails for the mind. They slow thoughts down, make them navigable, allow choice instead of impulse. And in a culture that moves relentlessly fast, that demands instant reactions and polished responses, choosing to pause and speak to yourself becomes quietly countercultural. Because let's be honest, most of what we say publicly isn't fully processed. It's reactive, performative, shaped by how it will land rather than how it feels. Talking to yourself removes the audience. And without an audience, something shifts. You don't have to impress. You don't have to defend. You don't even have to be consistent. You can be honest. When was the last time you said something out loud that didn't need approval, that wasn't optimized, that existed only to help you understand yourself a little better? Here's where it gets more complex. Not everyone who talks to themselves is doing it from peace. For some, it comes from anxiety, from fear, from a need to rehearse every possible outcome before stepping into the world. And that matters, because the same behavior can hold different meanings depending on what's driving it. Sometimes self-talk is soothing, other times it's compulsive. Sometimes it grounds, other times it loops. And the difference isn't in the words, it's in whether the voice feels like a companion or a critic. This is where the paradox lives. The same act that can regulate can also reinforce fear. The same inner dialogue that clarifies can also spiral. And understanding that complexity is part of respecting the behavior rather than judging it. Philosophically, there's something deeper happening here. Talking to yourself collapses the distance between thought and presence. It makes the inner visible, even if only to you. In a world that constantly says, "Be heard," choosing to speak only for yourself becomes an act of self-definition. Maybe the most profound conversations don't happen between people at all. Maybe they happen in the quiet spaces where no one is watching, where no identity is being curated, where no role needs to be played. There's a reason solitude has always been linked to insight, to prayer, to philosophy, to art. The voice you use when you talk to yourself is often the most unfiltered one you have. It's the voice that hasn't learned how to perform yet. Over time, people who allow themselves this inner dialogue often experience a subtle shift. They become more reflective, less reactive. They notice patterns in their thinking because they've heard them spoken aloud. They interrupt themselves, question themselves, reframe in real time. Colors look richer, time feels slower, decisions feel more deliberate, and science quietly supports this. Studies show that self-directed speech can improve problem-solving, emotional regulation, and focus. It activates the same neural pathways involved in executive function and self-control. In other words, talking to yourself isn't a breakdown of cognition, it's a tool of it. But culturally, we don't make much room for that. We value output over processing, confidence over contemplation, noise over nuance. And so behaviors that don't serve visibility get misunderstood. Sometimes that very presence, the quiet murmuring, the private dialogue makes someone seem distant, strange, hard to read. But maybe that's because their attention is inward, not absent. Maybe their silence between words is full, not empty. Maybe that's what real confidence looks like. Not the kind that announces itself, but the kind that doesn't need witnesses. The kind that knows what it thinks before asking what others think. There's something almost sacred about that. About keeping parts of your process private. About letting thoughts ripen without exposure. About understanding that not every moment needs translation. So the next time you notice someone talking to themselves, maybe don't rush to label it. Maybe don't assume something's missing. Perhaps something is simply happening that you're not meant to hear. And if this resonates with you, if you've ever found comfort in hearing your own voice when the world feels too loud, you don't need to explain it. You don't need to justify it. Maybe it's enough to know you're not alone in it. Leave a quiet comment if this spoke to you, or don't. Silence is valid too, because in the end, talking to yourself doesn't mean you're disconnected. Sometimes it means you're deeply in touch. And maybe the most human conversations are the ones we have when no one else is listening.